The story takes place in a world with a class system, where these classes are considered blessings bestowed by the goddess. When they turn 10 years old, every child participates in a blessing ceremony to receive their class, along with its corresponding skills. Errol, who is 10 years old this year, sat quietly with his family. Everyone was curious about what class he would receive. Errol's father was so nervous he couldn't sleep all night. His older sister, on the other hand, was full of confidence, certain that her little brother would receive the best class. His father thought the family would have a lot of fans. His mother said Errol would become famous soon, while his sister teased that he was still too young to have a girlfriend. Errol knew that once his family started talking, they couldn't be stopped. When he heard the bell ringing from the temple, he stood up, ready to go. His parents, lost in their loving chatter, only noticed when Errol had already left the room. They hurriedly called him back, telling him not to abandon his family. His sister pouted because he had left without waiting for her. Errol's parents were so overjoyed they couldn't stop dancing. Errol lived in a small rural town where there was no permanent priest. Only once a year, a priest was sent to perform the ceremonies. And today was that day. Errol didn't want to miss the opportunity because if he did, he'd have to wait until next year. He reminded them that if they kept dancing, it would be dark before they even got there. Luckily, the whole family made it just in time. At that moment, the priest was announcing the results for another boy who had just received the blacksmith class. That boy was overjoyed because now he could work alongside his father. Next to him was a little girl who had also received the same class as her mother. People began to notice that most of the children were receiving the same classes as their parents. It seemed that the class of the head of the household had a strong influence on the class their children would receive. Errol's sister was certain that her brother would follow the family's path. Then the priest called the next name. This time it was Errol, son of Leon. Everyone expected him to follow in his family's footsteps. In his family, everyone belonged to a high class. Errol's mother was the sword queen Farah, and his father was the magic king Leon. Errol was confused by what people were saying. So a man explained to him that high classes were far superior to basic classes and were very difficult to obtain. However, Errol's parents had received their high classes right away because they were geniuses, so everyone expected their son to achieve the same. The priest asked Errol to close his eyes and began the ritual. But even after performing the steps, the priest saw no reaction at all. It was a case so rare it was unbelievable. Errol was declared classless. Everyone was stunned, because classes were a blessing from the goddess, and being classless meant being forsaken by her. Errol's mother, trying to comfort her son, said that no matter what, they would continue to work hard for him. As they spoke, his father also reassured him, telling him not to worry and reminding him not to even think about doing anything foolish. Hearing that, Errol angrily shouted that he had no intention of doing such a thing. Everyone around them was astonished by his reaction. Then his sister came over and hugged him, laughing and saying that even if he were a potato, she'd still love him just the same. Errol couldn't believe everyone's reaction. He said that it seemed like everyone else was sad, but he himself didn't feel disappointed at all. His family asked if he was sure. Errol replied that he had been training with his mother's sword since he was a child. Even though everyone around him thought it was useless since he didn't have a swordsman class, Errol continued to practice. He believed that even without innate skills, he could still achieve them through perseverance. Errol said that while someone else might be gifted with a swordsman's skill, he could still learn to wield a sword through his own effort. He emphasized that even without a class or skills, he had no reason to be sad or pessimistic. Errol's words made everyone happy and relieved to see him so optimistic and resilient. His father proudly said that Errol would go far in the future. His mother was happy that her son was such a smart and strong-willed child. Errol continued to train relentlessly, his determination growing stronger. As he left, he could hear his parents' and sisters' voices behind him, all proud and happy for him. Errol heard his parents and sister chatting, discussing how he would become a great man in the future. Meanwhile, he noticed a few boys his age practicing. Those boys were so enthusiastic that their bodies moved naturally. thanks to their skills. One of them approached and asked Errol if he was the classless boy everyone was talking about, and wanted to know why he was here. Errol calmly replied that he was here to train. The boys laughed, saying they didn't need to train because they were swordsmen. They only came to test out their skills. Then, one of them offered to show Errol their skills. Two of the boys began to coordinate, performing a display of swordsmanship. Although it was only at a basic level, thanks to their skills, their movements were very smooth and fluid. Errol watched them closely, then called out to the two boys and challenged them to a match. The boys burst out laughing, unable to believe his offer. Errol asserted that, in his opinion, it would be a good fight. You added that your mother is the Sword Queen, a swordswoman so incredibly strong that you've never been able to land a single hit on her. One of the two boys asked if Errol was kidding, then accepted the challenge. He then wanted to confirm whether Errol had divine protection since he was classless. Errol nodded, explaining that while classes are only granted at age 10, divine protection is with a person from birth. It's another blessing from the goddess. Errol explained that in this regard, he was no different from anyone else. Divine protection is like an invisible suit of armor that reduces physical damage, as if you're being shielded from all harm. One of the boys wanted to make sure that Errol's life wouldn't be in danger, even if he was hit hard. He reminded him that even with protection, a painful hit is still painful, and told Errol to brace himself. The duel began, and as soon as it started, the boy reminded Errol, a classless person, to stop messing around. However, Errol quickly dodged and blocked his opponent's attacks. Seeing this, the other boy encouraged his friend to defeat Errol, but Errol easily parried every blow. Errol was excited to be fighting opponents of similar skill, as it allowed him to practice what he'd been training for. Another boy watching the fight shouted out, telling his friend to attack Errol from a different angle. However, when his opponent turned to respond, Errol realized that their skills improved their movements but didn't enhance their tactics or combat awareness. Seizing the opportunity while his opponent was distracted, Errol quickly launched his attack. Before the two boys could even understand what was happening, Errol had gained the upper hand. Errol approached the two boys, but one of them quickly stepped in front of him. The opponent yelled at Errol for getting close, shouting that he would cut him to pieces as he charged forward. But in the blink of an eye, Errol had defeated them both. Errol wondered if he had truly won, but the two boys refused to admit defeat. They claimed it didn't count because Errol had attacked while they were distracted and called him a coward. Errol just smiled and asked if they wanted a rematch. The boys nodded, ready to continue, but suddenly another young man stepped forward and stopped them. He told them not to embarrass themselves as swordsmen, asking what good excuses like that would be in a real battle. Errol didn't object. He didn't mind another chance to practice. The two boys curiously asked who the newcomer was, and then they suddenly remembered that he was a red-haired swordsman. He turned to Errol and asked if he was the son of the Sword Queen, Farah, and Errol responded with a nod. The swordsman pondered, wondering if someone classless like Errol could truly inherit his parents' abilities. He then declared that the other two boys were just an appetizer and that he would be Errol's next opponent. He told Errol to be proud, but not just for beating two easy opponents. The new swordsman said he would show Errol the true strength of a swordsman. He demanded a duel with Errol. This guy looked angry and practically shouted when he saw Errol spacing out. Errol didn't understand why this guy was so hostile toward him, especially since this was the first time they had ever met. Around them, people started whispering about the new guy. His red hair was identical to the head of the city's police force. And for good reason, because his father, Evans, was indeed the chief. Errol knew his father, Evans, who often came to his mother with requests to slay monsters. He remembered the face of the man named Evans, but he saw no resemblance at all between this guy and him. Errol wondered if this guy would one day become a plain old man like his father. The newcomer then began to praise his father, calling him the most talented man there was. In addition to his skill with a sword, he possessed leadership and decisiveness, which earned him great respect. Although Errol's mother was considered the strongest swordswoman, this guy was unwilling to acknowledge it. Errol slowly realized this guy was trying to prove something. He admired his own father, but he also wanted to surpass the fame of Arl's mother. Errol understood. This guy's anger was all about their parents. He shouted, assuming Errol must think his own mother was the strongest. Arl calmly replied that yes, his mother was considered the strongest in the world, but he wasn't particularly proud of her leadership skills. Only her strength. The other guy retorted that parents' skills are often passed down to their children. He was confronting Arel because he wanted to prove that his own family deserved the title of the strongest family. He had been training non-stop since becoming a swordsman a year ago, learning the art of the sword from his father. Thanks to his rigorous training, he had reached an intermediate skill level, something that normally takes 3 years. He declared that there was no way he would lose to someone like Arel. Errol just smiled and said he understood, recognizing that this guy truly respected his father and was desperately trying to prove his family's worth. Arl, though his opponent had trained hard in swordsmanship with his father, also had a foundation from his mother, a true sword master. He said he wouldn't lose easily, recalling how his mother had strictly forged his skills into him. When his rival declared the duel, they both began to move with their swords drawn, and the surrounding students watched the match tensely, as if it were a real battle. Many of those watching were amazed to see Arl could keep up with his opponent's intermediate skills. The match was a back and forth, as both sides tried to anticipate and counter the other's attacks. Suddenly, his opponent unleashed a dual attack using a double slash skill, leaving Errol no time to react. His opponent taunted him, asking how Arl could possibly block that attack from this distance. Errol was stunned, unable to understand how the attack could have come from both sides at once. His opponent explained that it was a powerful attack skill called Flash Cut, which allowed him to land 2 sword strikes in a single swing. Obviously, for someone without skills like Arel, blocking such an attack should have been impossible. But to everyone's surprise, Errol still managed to block one of the 2 strikes. He shot back, taunting his opponent by asking if he wanted to try that again. After the match, Arel returned home, and the next day, he was daydreaming about what had happened, even fantasizing about girls. He was woken from his dream by his older sister, who joked that a certain someone had come to wake him. Arel laughed and replied that he was awake. The 2 of them were as close as any brother and sister. When he went downstairs, he saw his mother had prepared breakfast, and he thanked her for the meal. Arel announced that he was going out. Ever since he was defeated by Evan's son, Errol had started leaving the house early and coming back late. His sister was getting worried, but their mother reassured her by pointing to the swords in the corner of the room, the ones Errol had been using ever since the day he lost. She explained that after that duel, Arl had found a new motivation and had become more determined than ever. His sister was thrilled to see her younger brother so full of life again. The mother asked her daughter about her father, and she replied that he was still sleeping, just like Errol used to. They laughed about how similar Errol and his father were. Ever since that match, Errol had been training relentlessly every day in the forest, trying to learn how to defend against the double slash skill, the move that had caused his defeat. He could still clearly remember how his opponent had executed the blow, making it look almost like magic. Errol's opponent had told him that if he improved his physical strength, he could perform higher-level skills. Errol wondered if he could develop enough physical strength to perform the double slash himself, without a special skill. If he could, he would be one step closer to breaking his limits without relying on a class or any gifted skills. Errol was determined to do whatever it took to gain that skill. He recalled the movements his red-haired opponent had made and told himself that one day he would find new ways to learn beyond what his mother had taught him. Suddenly, a small goblin attacked him. Errol quickly used the new techniques he'd been learning to take down the monster, and he felt he was becoming quite skilled at fighting them. The remaining goblins fled before he could find them. He liked the forest because he could train without being disturbed by anyone, even though it was dangerous at times. As it started to get dark, Arl prepared to head home. On his way, He discovered the tracks of a large enemy at the foot of the mountain and was about to report it to the city guard. But then he heard the desperate scream of a child. Errol told himself that if someone was being attacked, there was no time to run and get help. Confident he was strong enough to handle it, Errol moved forward cautiously. He was planning to keep his distance, but then he realized it was his old rival from the training grounds. Errol couldn't see clearly what he was fighting. But then he realized they were hobgoblins, large goblins capable of sending someone flying with a single strike. It dawned on Errol that his rival was probably also training in the forest, just like him. The goblins moved slowly but possessed incredible strength. He was glad to see the goblin had its back to him. It was about to attack Errol's rival, so he quickly planned to strike it down before it could launch another blow. His rival was panicking, telling the goblin to stay away. But it was clear he knew he couldn't move fast enough to escape. Just then, Errol attacked from behind, taking the goblin down much more easily than he'd expected. Errol's sparring partner breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the goblin defeated, even though he had just narrowly avoided a fatal blow. Despite having divine protection, his protective layer was still pierced by the goblin's cut, making him realize he wasn't as invincible as he thought. Errol said they needed to recover their health as quickly as possible and asked about holy water. But his opponent told him that his holy water had shattered during the fight. Errol then handed him his own bottle of holy water. After drinking it, his opponent fully recovered and asked about the attack Errol used to take down the goblin. He was stunned when Errol revealed it was the double cut. The opponent couldn't fathom how Errol had managed to learn that technique. Errol explained that after their previous duel, he had spent a lot of time training. He added that he hates losing, and to ensure he could win next time, he had set a goal to master this technique, although he never expected to meet again under these circumstances. The redhead replied that if Errol had trained that hard, they should have a rematch right now. But Errol advised him not to push himself, suggesting they could fight anytime. However, the opponent insisted on repaying his debt as he felt indebted to Errol, especially since Errol had shared his holy water. Errol smiled, praising his strong sense of responsibility and saying he was truly a good person. They began their duel right after that. Errol used the double cut to attack, but his opponent couldn't block it. Even though he was certain he had blocked both strikes, he couldn't understand what had just happened. Errol explained to his opponent that the attack wasn't just 2 slashes, it was actually 3. He said it wasn't an official skill, but rather a technique he could improve through constant practice and by chaining his strikes together. His opponent was in shock. Even though he had seen it with his own eyes, he found it hard to believe that a true swordsman like himself had lost to Errol, someone without a class. He claimed that what Errol did was just mimicry, but Errol immediately suggested another duel to clearly decide who was stronger. The result was the same. Errol won again. He said that perhaps it would always be this way. After parting ways with his opponent, Errol returned home. At home, everyone was talking about Evan's son. They heard the boy had left for Brescia. Errol didn't know what Brescia was, so he asked his mother. His mother explained that Brescia is a famous city for swordsmen, and it's also where she worked before she got married. She added that it takes a week to get there by carriage. His mother mentioned that before getting married, she had joined the Swordsmen's Guild to pursue her passion for sword fighting. Errol's mother said her time in Brescia was a happy one, where she and her comrades trained in advanced skills. But she felt even more blessed to have her husband and family by her side. After hearing about Brescia, Errol couldn't stop thinking about the city. Sometime later, a group was departing for Brescia. The coachman announced that they would be there as soon as they passed through the gate. On the carriage, a woman asked a man if he was also on his way to Brescia. The man was surprised to learn that a woman like her was a swordsman. When asked about her profession, she replied that she was a rogue, a high-level class. Hearing this, the man looked disappointed and revealed that he was a gladiator. The woman wondered why the man seemed so displeased. Even though he had a high-level class, the man replied that he was annoyed to be on the same level as a woman like her. Just then, the coachman noticed a group of orcs blocking the road ahead. and there was even an orc king among them. The coachman asked the man to prove his strength by defeating the monsters. However, the man said that a threat of this level required a monster extermination squad. He then ignored all the passengers' pleas for help, even their begging to at least protect the children. He declared that protecting himself was his top priority and ran away. The coachman also intended to make a quick getaway, but suddenly, a young boy charged towards the orcs. In the blink of an eye, the boy was in the middle of the monsters. Everyone was amazed to see he was strong enough to face them all by himself. However, all the orcs quickly surrounded him and asked what he planned to do. The boy responded with fluid movements, dodging and attacking the orcs as if he were dancing, his sword swinging lightly, yet with great power. This confused everyone. Such graceful, dance-like movements in combat could usually only be mastered by a sword queen. No one could understand how a boy like him could have achieved such a skill. After defeating all the orcs single-handedly, he returned and asked the coachman to continue their journey. The coachman realized that the heroic boy who saved the entire convoy was Errol, now all grown up. When the coachman asked what Errol's class was, he simply replied that he was classless. The coachman looked skeptical, thinking Errol was hiding something and probably possessed an extremely powerful class. Remembering the incident on the road to Brescia 5 years ago, he couldn't believe someone without a class could pull something like that off. Meanwhile, Arel continued his training with determination. His mother, watching him train, wondered if Errol could really use the dual blade cut. Even though Arel confirmed it, she still thought she was dreaming, unable to believe that a boy not blessed by any class could master such a difficult technique. When Errol assured her that she wasn't dreaming, he asked his mother to teach him all the skills she knew. Arel's mother was incredibly excited and proud, shouting for everyone to hear that her son, Arel, was a true genius. Now, Arel was all grown up and had arrived in the city of Brescia. The coachman told Errol that this city was full of talented swordsmen with amazing skills. Arel, after a moment of observation, pointed out that the coachman himself was very talented. However, the coachman humbly denied it, insisting he was just a driver. Errol replied that based on how well the coachman understood fighting techniques, he must have once been a swordsman and had been very calm when facing the orcs. Errol said he was sure that if he hadn't defeated the orcs, the coachman would have handled them brilliantly. The coachman said that while he could have handled the orcs, that sort of thing just wasn't his style anymore. He revealed that he used to serve in the palace, where there were many rules to follow, and being a coachman now was much more interesting, as he got to meet all sorts of people. Before leaving, he encouraged Errol to do his best. Errol thought the coachman might belong to a high-tier class, perhaps a holy knight or something similar. While he was lost in thought, a girl suddenly appeared and fell over, complaining that Arel had kept dodging her without even looking. But she also insisted that it didn't mean he had the necessary skills. Arel was surprised, wondering what this girl was up to. She immediately asked if Arel was new and looking for a guild to join. Just as he'd planned, he was intending to join a guild. The girl excitedly said she was also looking for new members for her guild, and Errol began to suspect she had run into him on purpose. She cheerfully handed him a contract to join her guild, waiting for Errol's response, but he wasn't interested. The girl asked why he rejected the offer without even looking at it, and he replied that she was too desperate for new members, which suggested her guild was probably weak. The girl lied, claiming they were very famous, but Errol easily saw through it. She offered to go on a date with him if he joined the guild, but he said he wasn't interested in a girl like Lilia. The interaction with the girl felt like he had been through this before. He remembered how his girlfriend used to act the same way. He decided to find a strong and famous guild. He noticed a large open area where guilds were advertising themselves. He started applying to a few guilds, but everyone rejected him because he was classless. He was frustrated that people turned him away just by looking at his application. Then he remembered the letter of recommendation his mother had written for him. At first, he thought his mother was just being overprotective. But her thinking had indeed been far-sighted and correct. Errol decided to find the guild his mother used to be a part of. As Errol was sitting with an annoyed look on his face, the girl appeared out of nowhere, asking if he'd found a guild. He remarked that it seemed she hadn't given up hope. She started getting closer, saying that because they were short on members, their very survival was at stake. Errol pointed out that had nothing to do with him. The girl followed him and begged him to save them. He arrived at the area where his mother's guild was located. The girl was there too and pointed to a large building, saying that was their guild. He was surprised and asked why they were short on members. The girl explained that their former glory had vanished and they were now the weakest guild. She was determined to bring glory back to the guild as it once was. The girl declared that her guild, Dragonfang, was invincible. Errol remembered that this was the very guild his mother had joined. He knew the name came from his master's technique, called the Dragonfang Cut, also known as the Kaika Dragon Bite. Errol realized this was the guild his mother had mentioned. The girl led him to the reception room. A man who was drinking asked if he was a new recruit. It was the girl's father, who was also a dual-wielding swordmaster. He was missing his right arm and told everyone to give up on this guild. She explained that he used to be a famous swordsman, but after losing his arm, he had become a drunkard. She was worried that Errol wouldn't join their guild after seeing its condition. However, Errol confirmed that he still wanted to join. She was ecstatic and hurriedly filled out his application form. When she found out he had no class, she thought it was some kind of sick joke. But Errol made it clear that he wasn't kidding and showed her his job certificate. She was shocked and cried out when she learned the truth. She said that people who join a guild should be swordsmen or knights. At the very least, they should know some kind of skill. She couldn't believe that someone as arrogant as him was classless. But then a woman entered the room and asked what was wrong with Lilia. Her name was Reina. Reina said she heard Lilia screaming. Lilia explained that the new member was classless. Reina was shocked when she saw Errol, but Errol didn't remember who she was. She said that she was from the same village and they had even dueled before. Errol was confused that he couldn't remember a beauty like her. All he remembered was fighting a boy with a similar hair color. That was Evan's son, but Reina clarified that Evans only had one daughter, her. Errol was shocked to find out he thought Reina was a boy during their childhood because she had short hair back then. Errol thought she was a boy and apologized for the mix-up. Reina told him to just forget about it. The next morning, Lilia wished him a good morning and asked if he slept well last night. Sleeping in a real bed felt like heaven to him. Lilia said she had an important announcement to make in front of everyone. She said that since they had gathered a total of 3 people, they were now eligible to participate in the guild competition. Lilia wanted to participate in the upcoming guild war next week. Errol asked if it was going to be a team battle, but Lilia explained that it would be a battle royale. The last one standing wins. Lilia further explained that the maximum number of participants is 10, so they would likely be fighting 3 against 10. It seemed impossible, but she said they couldn't afford to lose this match. She and Reina had earned enough money through single battles or subjugation quests, but the income to keep the guild running had reached its limit. If they couldn't win the prize money next week, they would lose their home. She wanted to win at all costs. She said that in the battle, there probably wouldn't be any A ranks. And since Lilia and Reina were both B ranks, she was confident they would be strong enough. Errol didn't understand what the ranking system was. This was the first time he'd ever heard of it. Lilia explained that their ranks were divided into 4 tiers, A, B, C, and D. Out of the approximately 500 swordsmen in the city, only 20 were A rank. Both Reina and Lilia were B rank. Then she explained that the chances of facing an A rank opponent were very slim, if not 0. She was going to go check on their enemies. Reina said that until that day came, she would continue to train. She was about to leave when Errol called her name. She didn't like the way he addressed her. Errol asked her what other skills she had besides superhuman strength. She said she had the skill sturdiness, which minimizes the degradation of divine protection, meaning she could reinforce her divine protection. Arel wanted to learn that skill. He grabbed her hand and asked if she could hit him with her sword, but Reina didn't want to do that. Errol said it was a way for them to get closer, but she misunderstood what he meant. She got embarrassed and didn't know what kind of act would please him. She said she wanted to start with a normal friendship, but Errol realized there was a huge misunderstanding going on. He clarified that he wanted her to hit him because he wanted to copy the sturdiness skill. He wanted to be able to endure more hits. He was thinking of taking a hit while his protection was inactive. He wanted to make his skill more effective, so he wanted to be hit by someone with a strong attack power. She was disappointed by that. She said that skills are blessings they receive from the goddess, and Errol couldn't learn them just like that. Arel disputed that theory and asked Reina to put her sword down. Reina said he wouldn't be able to lift it, but he swung the sword anyway. She was amazed to see that he could swing her sword without using superhuman strength. He said he could use still image and double-edged blade. He explained that thanks to his harsh daily training, he was able to copy skills. In his opinion, Reina can't win against sheer effort. Reina said that if effort was worthless, then she would just be an ordinary swordswoman. After seeing everything that had happened, Reina understood. She agreed to take part in his special training program. She also mentioned that she would fight him seriously. Errol was happy to see that Reina was a good-hearted woman. She asked Errol to stop teasing her. After that, they started training. A while later, Lilia returned, announcing to everyone that today they would be fighting Black Blade, currently the top guild with A-rank members. She said their leader would surely form a team to completely annihilate them. Lilia advised everyone that they needed to train harder, but then she noticed Arl was injured and covered in blood. She thought Reina and Arl had fought, but Reina explained it was just a special training session. Errol said he was hungry and asked for breakfast, but Lilia suggested he really needed to drink some holy water. A few days passed, and the day of the guild battle arrived. They arrived at the arena, where everyone was talking about Dragonfang, saying the guild had fallen. Some people were even discussing bets for the match. Everyone was certain that Black Blade would win. Lilia found that insulting. Errol realized the whole reason for the arena was betting, with the potential payout for betting on them being as high as 20 times. This definitely wasn't a good thing, as it showed no one expected them to win. But it was also a perfect opportunity to make the money they needed. Lilia said she would use all their money to bet on themselves. If they won, they would be financially secure. The leader of Black Blade approached Lilia, praising her efforts to protect her father's guild. He then mocked them, saying he'd heard a classless person had joined them. The leader, Gorge, said it was sad to see a once-rival guild fall so low. He explained how he had arranged a middleman so they could fight each other. He said this was a perfect chance for Lilia to make some extra money and encouraged them to do their best. But Lilia, Reina, and Arl knew Gorge had no intention of helping them. That guy still wanted to crush every guild he came across. Arl was wondering why Reina was in their guild. She explained that when she arrived in the city that day, no guild wanted to accept her, but he praised her for not giving up, despite being rejected by every guild. She had also been mistaken for a boy by Errol. He offered to let her join their guild, and that was Lilia's father, who saved her when she was cast aside. This was her time to save him. Lilia then said that Arel was also saved by her guild, so she suggested he repay his debt. But Arel said that she was the one who forced him to join her guild. The battle was about to begin. Black Blade and Dragonfang were in the arena. There were 4 A-rankers in Black Blade, but their leader wasn't among them. Arl wondered if the leader was holding back against them. But according to Reina, he was as fired up as ever. The announcer began to call out the names of the fighters. The first one from Black Blade was the rapier swordsman, Geo. He stepped forward, declaring he would end the match by himself. Next up was Errol from Dragonfang. When he was announced as being classless, the audience was shocked. They wondered if the announcer was joking, but they all found it exciting to watch Arel start defeating the A-rankers. Before long, Errol had defeated 9 people all by himself. Everyone wondered how he could possibly be classless. Lilia was also shocked to see how strong Arel was. She asked why Reyna hadn't told her about this. Reyna hadn't expected him to be like this either, since she hadn't seen him in 5 years. Lilia said she needed to get ready immediately after the match. Reyna wondered if this was for a celebration, but she clarified that it was for a wedding. She said that if she could secure Errol, the guild would do well. She didn't want to let him get away. Just then, the 10th fighter from Black Blade stepped forward. His name was Masamune. Wielding a thin, curved sword, he's a high-ranking samurai from the west, and it was the first time Lilia and Reyna had ever seen him. He's like the Black Blade Guild's secret weapon. Errol could feel the pressure even before the samurai drew his sword. He knew that a single careless move would cost him the match. The samurai said that no ordinary technique could defeat Errol, so he was planning to use a single killer blow. Even after hearing the samurai's plan, Errol didn't back down. He said he couldn't let the situation become a stalemate and expressed his interest in seeing this so-called killer technique. The samurai said that would be impossible, because the moment he activated his skill, Errol would already be on the ground. But Errol insisted that he was confident in his own speed and was already calculating how to defend against it. The samurai didn't draw his sword immediately. His concentration was so intense that you couldn't get near him. He was certain that the faster man would be the victor. The samurai attacked instantly, thinking he had gained the upper hand on Errol. But when he opened his eyes, he realized Errol had vanished. The samurai knew Errol wasn't using an illusion technique. Errol had simply moved faster than his own blade. The samurai commented that Errol must be the fastest person in the city, but Errol replied that he'd learned the skill from someone even faster, his mother. He declared that he would now use his mother's killer technique. Then, he attacked the samurai with a sword strike called Piercing Tempest. Reyna recognized the myriad of sword strikes and knew it was the Sword Princess's signature killer technique. The audience couldn't even grasp what had happened, as Errol was too fast for the eye to see, and with that, the moment of judgment came. Errol was declared the winner. The Dragonfang Guild had defeated Black Blade. Lilia and Reyna were overjoyed, while many others were disappointed with George because they had bet on Black Blade. Some were even demanding their money back from him. Lilia was so happy that the moment she saw Errol, she leaped in for a hug, but Errol dodged it, saying it was a habit of his to evade anyone who lunged at him. Reyna felt a bit sheepish for having gotten so carried away in the moment. The three of them later celebrated their victory with drinks. Lilia was drinking alcohol, while the other two had juice. Errol was quite surprised to learn that Lilia was older than Reyna. But then, Lilia suddenly proposed marriage to Errol. Though he rejected the idea, Lilia tried to persuade him by moving closer, telling him he could fulfill all of his desires with her. But Errol had no such intentions and said that he prefers women like Reyna. Reyna was shocked to hear this. She told Errol to come up with a better lie if he was going to turn Lilia down. But Errol insisted he wasn't lying. Reyna couldn't understand how he could say that to her. She was always told she acted like a man because she was a swordswoman. Unlike Lilia, who was always cute with her hair accessories. She thought it was impossible for someone to like a woman who didn't act feminine. She felt that as a swordswoman, she wasn't suited for such feelings. Lilia understood that Reyna was pretty hopeless with romantic feelings, so she felt assured that she wouldn't become Reyna's rival in attracting Errol. She asked Errol if he was tired and offered to help him relax. But Errol wanted Reyna to do it instead. His divine protection was fading, so he wanted to learn a solid skill. Lilia was annoyed that Errol only seemed to have Reyna on his mind. But just then, her father interrupted, calling her careless. She informed him of their victory against Black Blade, and her father assumed Black Blade must have been at their worst. Lilia corrected him, saying they had 4 A-rank members. She explained that it was Errol who had single-handedly defeated the guild. She also added that thanks to the win, they had earned enough money to stay afloat. She believed that with Errol, they could restore the guild to its former glory. However, her father said that someone as strong as Errol would just move on to another guild right away. She replied that Errol was going to marry her, But Errol insisted that he had never made such a promise. Errol thought Lilia was naive, but she was still better than someone who had given up. Errol blamed her father for giving up so easily, saying it was irresponsible of him when he could still wield a sword with just one hand. Her father got angry hearing this. He grabbed Errol and said that Errol knew nothing about him. The man said that the moment he lost his two swords, he lost half of his strength. Errol couldn't understand any of it since he didn't have any skills himself. The man left after the conversation. Lilia thanked Errol and said his lecture might have worked. She said that if she and Reina had said something, Errol would have just treated it as a joke. Errol planned to show off his skills. Reina said that Errol loves learning other people's skills. Lilia cut in and mentioned a place where Errol could learn many skills. There's a huge labyrinth underground beneath the city, a dungeon with traps and areas full of magical monsters. Errol couldn't understand why on earth they would allow such a thing, but Lilia explained that it was a perfect training ground for swordsmen and that it was created by the gods. She also mentioned that the place was really famous and that she would let Errol know tomorrow, since it's very dark inside the dungeon. Lilia was hoping a romance would blossom between her and Errol. Errol asked Reina what they should do, and Reina said they would go because she wanted to participate in the Divinity Tournament. The Divinity Tournament is a battle to decide who is the strongest in the city. They gave Errol a registration form to participate, but he tore it up right after glancing at it. Reina was shocked and asked what was wrong, wondering if he didn't want to join, but Errol explained that it was a marriage registration form. Reina mocked Lilia for her foolish act. A woman was observing them in a magical liquid, assigned by George, the leader of the Black Blade Guild. They were watching them using magic. She informed George that the team would be moving to the labyrinth tomorrow, which he had expected. The father sensed that an unexpected enemy was approaching them. He said that no one would come to help and that everything depended on their own strength. The next morning, Lilia woke Errol up. She was naked and asked him if last night had been difficult. Errol said his head was about to explode. He was shocked to see she had entered his room and asked her what she was doing there, an unmarried girl in his room alone. He then called her a pervert. She apologized for sneaking into his room. He told her not to do it again, but she said there was no need to worry as long as he became her husband. She wanted to do something that married couples do, but Errol refused and left the room. Lilia cried, wondering if he was even a healthy boy. She couldn't understand how he could just leave a naked beauty like her all alone. Errol then went to Reina's room and knocked. She asked if he needed a moment. He asked her to exorcise the evil spirit that had possessed his room. Reina was responding nonsensically as he entered the room, only to discover she was asleep. He realized her response was just sleep talk. She was smiling in her dream because she had finally become a swordsman like her father. He realized that Reina was obsessed with her father. He didn't understand why she would mistake him for her dad, and wondered if his voice had changed. Reina called him from upstairs, saying she was going to train a bit in the basement. After a while, the three of them were walking through the shopping district, and Lilia showed them the gate to the labyrinth. Errol had expected a cave-like entrance, but it looked more like a house. Lilia said that maybe the gods have good taste, since there were a lot of people there with the Divinity Cup tournament coming up. They went into another gate and saw a long line to get inside. Errol wondered if some kind of special training was going on. Lilia explained that in the back, there was a teleportation magic circle that could take anyone to where they wanted to go. By using it, anyone could return to the surface. You can only go down on foot if you've never been to that floor before. Errol was surprised to hear all this. Reina had been to the 14th floor, while Lilia had made it to the 12th. Errol expressed that he wanted to go to the 14th floor, but that wasn't how the system worked. Lilia explained that magic only allows a person to travel to a place they have been to at least once. He felt embarrassed for wanting to fight someone so strong. Lilia said she would show him the shortest path. They were ready to give it their all before the Divinity Cup tournament. Lilia told Reina that she would take care of Errol and suggested Reina go to the deeper floors if she wanted, but Reina insisted on going with them. Lilia tried to avoid Reina on the way, saying there was no need for two guides. She pulled Errol along with her. Errol felt it would be more trouble if he went with just Lilia, so he suggested Reina come with them. Reina felt happy but didn't understand why she also felt relieved. Lilia announced that they had reached the underground area. They encountered living armor to train with. As soon as they arrived, the suits of armor almost immediately started attacking them. The suits of armor moved quickly despite their height, although they were no match for an A-ranker. They could even move without their heads. Reina explained that they were suits of armor animated by the dungeon's magic, so they didn't feel pain or have any weak points. Errol understood that the only way to immobilize them was to cut off their legs. In just a moment, he had done it. Everyone asked what they should do with the pieces. Reina said that they would revive after a while and attack them again. This was a good place to practice. Lilia noted they were pretty strong enemies for the first floor, but in reality, she hadn't really done anything. She said it was just her way of testing the newcomers. But the truth was, she didn't get a chance because Reina and Errol were too fast. He asked Lilia what her class was. She said she was a swordsman, and that if there were any skills he wanted to learn, she would gladly help him. However, Errol had already been trained in swordsmanship. Princess Lilia's skills were of no use to Errol. Lilia said Errol had no empathy, but they were interrupted by a voice crying for help. A heavily injured person appeared before them, saying that when they first entered the room, a trap was sprung. Reina said she would take him to the exit, but he refused because his comrades were still in that room. He wanted to go back to save them and asked for Reina's help. Lilia warned Reina not to go, wanting to strike a deal to get proper compensation for helping them. Errol said that Lilia had no right to lecture him about empathy after what she did with the undead. The boy said he had seen Lilia in a magazine, thinking it was an article about a beautiful swordswoman, but he found out it was about the fall of her guild. Lilia got angry and wanted to ignore the boy after hearing that, but he offered them all the betting money he had won the week before. That amount of money was truly valuable to Lilia, and she agreed to help. But Errol seemed suspicious, saying there was too much blood. Lilia thought that could happen if one's divine protection was severed, something she knew from her father. Reina said that not everyone was as strong as Errol and was willing to help. The boy asked them to come with him to his comrades. Lilia was delighted to get the money and told everyone to work as hard as possible. She was very happy that she would be able to eat delicious food when they got out. Errol noticed the bloody footprints and the strange wounds. He figured such blood loss would be life-threatening and the boy shouldn't be able to stand, let alone without any holy water. But Errol wondered if this was a trap. He felt excited at the possibility, as it would be more interesting than the living armor. The girls urged him to hurry up, and the boy led them to the entrance of a hidden room. But there was no door, just a normal wall. The boy told them to push on it, and a hidden door appeared. Reina wanted to rush inside, but Errol told the boy to go in first. They didn't see any comrades or enemies there, but noticed there was a lot of blood on the ground. Lilia also noticed there was a lot of money there. Reina and Errol wondered about Lilia's behavior. The moment she touched the money, some kind of magic was activated. The boy apologized to them and explained that a job is a job. It was a transportation magic that had been activated, and the entire room was teleported away. They had fallen into a vast space with no escape. Reina and Errol wondered if they had gone deeper than the 14th floor. But all Errol cared about was that the money had disappeared. The boy who led them into the trap was transported along with them. He also wondered how he got transported. Errol noticed a pillar of light there. The boy explained to Lilia that he had been ordered to lead them to the room. Errol realized that the room had a summoning circle, and anyone who entered it would not be able to get out alive. With the lowest probability, a creature in rainbow-colored armor appeared before them. It was the highest-level sword god, also known as an incarnation. Lilia said that her life would end here, but she wanted to become a handsome gentleman before she died. Suddenly, they felt something large flying toward them. They all hit the ground. Reina noticed the wounds from a sword. Errol explained that it was a skill from the sword god called Divine Piercing Blade. It was a technique that sent a flying attack toward the opponent. He said that the god would be within range anywhere in this room. Reyna didn't know how Arel knew so much about the sword god's skills, but he announced that it was getting closer and he would fight the god. And it was an intense fight, but thanks to his strength training, the reduction from the divine protection was lower than he had imagined. The god was so fast that all the attacks happened in the blink of an eye. Errol said that the Shikuchi skill was insane, but it was actually a higher skill called Divine Step. With that skill, the god could reach any corner of the room in an instant. Without a doubt, it was a true sword god. Lilia worried that Arel couldn't possibly win. But Arel had seen all the skills before, and he said this was a good way to test his abilities. The injured boy asked how he could see a situation like this as a performance test. It was an opportunity for Errol to attack, and so he did. The girls wondered if that was also Divine Step. Even just seeing the swords clash, they felt as if they were taking damage. They couldn't believe that Arel was fighting a god. Reyna wondered if there were any other deadly skills in the game, as their bodies felt heavy and they couldn't understand what was happening. Actually, the god had activated the Divine Order skill, which reduces the target's divine protection, compromising their power. To a human, they couldn't even see where Errol was. Errol recalled his training sessions with his mother. She had taught him how to counter Divine Order and how to use a skill in the situation called Infinite Breakthrough, also known as High-Speed Slash. Lilia and Reyna were watching the fight between the god and Errol. Errol was fighting so casually, which was unbelievable. Then Errol decided to use his final skill to win the match, and money began to fall from the armor. Errol activated the Infinite Breakthrough skill, a very valuable skill, because it wasn't a skill for a classless person. Arel defeated the sword god. Lilia danced with joy and said that was her husband. Reyna was shocked by what she was saying, but she approached Errol to find out how he knew the sword god's skills. Lilia wondered about that too. She had lived in this city her whole life, but had never seen the sword god. Arel explained that his mother was actually a sword god. Lilia couldn't believe it because his father didn't know about her. He said that his mother had probably changed her class before leaving the city. Reyna didn't understand why a sword princess would live in an ordinary village. He said that his mother hated standing out. Reyna then told him that if she had known he was the son of the sword god, she wouldn't have asked him for a duel. Errol was glad he had kept it a secret. The match with Reyna was very important to him. Lilia said that instead of talking about the past, they should look for a way out. A summoning circle that appeared in the cleared room was dealt with, but suddenly they noticed a similar light from where the living armors had appeared. They wondered if it was another summoning circle. Errol decided to jump into it, and Reyna followed, saying they'd be fine as long as they were with Errol. Lilia then called for the boy who had tricked them to come along. The boy introduced himself as Deal, and couldn't believe the girl was willing to help him. Lilia said that they hadn't punished him properly yet, so they were taking him with them. She thought that what the boy did had actually benefited Errol and planned to let it slide. Meanwhile, Lilia's father was drinking in a bar. He overheard some men talking about how they had tricked a small guild into a teleportation trap to make money. They said it was how Black Blade was going to win. Lilia's father approached them and asked if they would mind sharing more information. One of the men recognized that he was missing his right arm. They realized it was the former guildmaster of Dragonfang, and they grew fearful. Lilia's father screamed, asking them what they did to his daughter. The man explained that they had lured them into a trap. George walked in and asked if Rod was causing a commotion. Rod is Lilia's father. Rod said he suspected that the other man was the one who ordered the men to lure his guild into the trap. George acted as if he didn't know what Rod was talking about. Rod told him not to play dumb, saying he knew George had a tendency to set traps for people who got in his way. George called it a ridiculous accusation. He said there was no proof and that it was just a coincidence that his guild members were there when Lilia and her team entered the room. He lied, saying they had tried to stop them from going in. George told Rod to confirm it when Lilia got back, but he was thinking that they would never return alive. Rod then turned to leave, but he suddenly noticed Lilia and her team in the bar. She invited them to a party with the money they had earned. Lilia's father and George were both shocked to see them alive. He asked if they'd been tricked into a trap. Lilia said they nearly died, but managed to defeat the enemy. However, George just thought they were lying. Lilia insisted that their guild was actually very strong. George couldn't believe that B-rankers like them could defeat a sword god. Errol said that the people who lured them into the trap had confessed. George tried to feign innocence again, but Lilia shouted. She said the place was in an underground labyrinth, and it was their own fault for walking into the trap. Even though that made sense, Rod said he would never forgive George for targeting his precious daughter's life. George asked what a drunkard like him could possibly do. Rod replied that he would stop drinking. George said that wouldn't change the fact that he was an old man who had lost half his skill. George then said he would join the upcoming battle and was determined to take down Errol. Errol said he would consider it. George was frustrated that the guild had survived such a trap. But after the Sword Princess disappeared, they had crushed the dual sword master, so the title of strongest should have been George's. He couldn't believe that an unranked nobody could defeat higher-level people one after another. He wondered if his position was about to be stolen. George was determined to kill Errol. He observed a sword and thought about using it. Meanwhile, the Dragonfang Guild is discussing the upcoming battle. Reina wonders if their debts are coming due. Lilia announces that the qualifiers for the battle have been posted. She and Errol are in the same bracket. Reina explains that the winners of each bracket can advance to the real match. She says she's lucky to be in a different bracket from the two of them and is determined to pass the qualifiers this year. Errol says she should tell her father. She says her dad would be thrilled. Then she realizes he used the word papa instead of father, which makes her chances seem slim. Lilia says she won't give up. She suggests going back to the underground labyrinth. They say goodbye to Rod, but he reminds them to be careful this time. He's worried about his daughter and is determined to return as a swordsman. On the day of the Divine Sword Tournament qualifiers, Lilia risked her own victory, but is happy that Errol will be fighting the person she lost to. She says they'll use special skills, so she reminds him to be careful. Errol says he's seen most of the skills in the labyrinth. She reminds him that these skills aren't related to swordsmen, but to magic swordsmen, who fight with magic alongside their swords, forming a strange class. But his opponent says she doesn't want to be criticized by someone unranked like Errol. She says she doesn't want to hear any excuses like him losing because of her advantage. Errol confirms he won't and says the stronger one will win. She starts using her sword magic, attacking him with various moves. She tells him to dance for her until he's exhausted. She uses a flame sword, making it impossible for him to read her moves due to its overwhelming attack power. But he was able to win. Errol says it's a powerful sword, but she doesn't know how to use it properly. Her magic is what you'd call average. He says that compared to his father's magic, her flame is like a candle. He also says she's not much better than Lilia. Lilia gets angry hearing that, and with his final moves, he defeats the magic girl. He is announced as the winner of Bracket 4. He's wondering if he can learn magic. Lilia is waking up her father to go watch the final qualifiers. He's sleeping on the sofa but tells her to go by herself. She asks if he's afraid of George. Rod yells that he would never be afraid of George. She insists on convincing him, saying they have seats because they're in the same guild. He doesn't explain much, but realizes his skills have gotten rusty. He says he can't watch the sword tournament like this, but she says he doesn't understand how the people who actually made it to the final qualifiers feel. She informs her father that he's coming with her, no excuses, and drags him to the match. She asks if he was planning to sneak off and watch it later. He asks why she would think that. She explains that she knows her father loves watching the guild members grow. The Reina he's been keeping an eye on is finally participating this year. Rod gets flustered, wondering if she's praising him like her mother used to. Meanwhile, Errol notices Reina sitting alone. He asks if she's okay. Reina tells him not to startle her. He explains that she looks so nervous, he just wanted to check on her. She yells that it's a huge city event, so obviously she's going to be nervous. Errol doesn't even know who she's fighting. Errol figures she's scared of having to face him. He tells her not to get ahead of herself. Reina thanked him for waiting for her. It was time to announce the first match, and the first fighter was the Sword Emperor, George. Rod hoped that Reina wouldn't have to fight him. George's opponent was announced as the classless fighter, Errol. Reina reminded him to be careful. He assured her that he would come back. Lilia also encouraged him to defeat George. From the audience seats, Errol looked towards the entrance where George was supposed to appear, but what emerged from it shocked everyone. George looked like a monster and was holding a different sword. Rod understood what was happening. He warned Errol not to get close to George, explaining that George possessed the worst kind of weapon. George's sword contained a very powerful demonic entity within it. George, in his monstrous form, was surprised that someone like Rod still existed. Rod asked if George was someone from the royal court. But George was possessed by the demonic entity, so he couldn't recognize Rod. Back when Rod was active in the royal court, he had seen the demon sword during a maintenance check. When did the sword god destroy the demonic entity? This world is haunted by the grudges it carries. Afterwards, the sword was sealed away, and the demonic entity lived on for hundreds of years. To it, human lives were fleeting compared to a demon's. Everyone who knew about it had died, and the truth became a legend filled with fear and horror. But George had sought the power to control the might of the demon sword. The demonic entity introduced itself as Dulgelda. He was eager to enjoy his own existence after waiting for so long. Reina had learned about it in her history class. She told Errol that the demonic entity had once summoned an evil god. She wondered how a legend could possibly be real. Lilia was terrified hearing about the demon. She knew it had destroyed countless cities with its power alone. The audience panicked and decided to run for their lives. The demonic entity, however, relished their screams of panic and despair, but that still wasn't enough for him. After hundreds of years of boring waiting, he created a magic circle on the ground so that no one could leave. The audience screamed, shoved one another, and cried, begging to be let out of there. Lilia wondered how a demon could do such things. For him, massacring humans in a state of terror and pain was the best feeling in the world. But Errol pointed his blade at the demon. The demon, surprised, asked if he wasn't afraid of its magic. Errol replied that he wasn't afraid and believed he could win, because it had been defeated by the sword god before, which proved it wasn't invincible. The demon said that if Arl were the sword god, he might have a chance, but it declared that a sword god no longer existed in this world. Rod agreed with that, and Lilia tried to tell her father that Arl's mother was a sword god. Arl told the demon that a sword god does exist in this world, and that the demon couldn't defeat him. Errol began attacking the demon with his techniques, stunning the creature as he used the skills of a sword god, like Divine Step and Infinite Strike. The demon was astonished that it couldn't defend against Errol. His movements were so similar to the previous sword god, yet he claimed to be just an average, classless person. Ultimately, the demon was destroyed by him. Everyone was in shock at how Errol had managed to do it. Some wondered if his divine protection might have run out. People suspected the demon might be able to launch a counterattack. They all wanted to know who he was. The demon had another plan. He didn't want to be sealed away again. To escape, the demon needed to leave George's body and possess another human. But no one in the audience was strong enough to help him escape the situation. Then, the demon thought of a second plan. He decided to use all his remaining power to fight Errol. Lilia was relieved that both Reina and Errol were safe. Reina wondered if the tournament would even continue, seeing as the arena had been completely destroyed. But the demon had spotted someone he could use to escape. Errol heard the sound of a sword ringing out. He saved Reina from the demon, but the spot where Lilia had been standing was destroyed. Reina and Errol went to check if Lilia was all right. Lilia said that she had been saved by her father. Errol realized he should have paid more attention to the sword than to George, but it was too late. The demon had possessed the body of Rod, the old man. He ordered Lilia to stand, pointing his sword at her. Errol said that he would have to defeat the demon once again. The demon threatened him, saying that if Errol tried to attack, he would kill Lilia, his fiancée. Errol couldn't understand what the demon was talking about. The demon explained that he had inherited the memories of the body he possessed. He said that the body's daughter had called Errol her future husband, but Errol said that if necessary, he would sacrifice Lilia. Reyna interrupted, trying to stop him. Errol stated that the demon had to understand a girl's exact value to make demands, arguing that a girl must be valuable to someone else. Lilia thought that was a horrible way to put it. She apologized, saying it was just a passing thought, and she begged him not to kill her, promising to do whatever he asked. The demon replied that he wouldn't listen to a worthless girl like Lilia. Reyna said that she felt sorry for Lilia, but Errol insisted that the demon wouldn't kill Lilia. The demon told Errol not to provoke him. The demon heard what Errol said and asked if Reyna thought someone like him would hesitate to kill a girl. He said that Errol would regret this later, but the demon realized that he couldn't move. Lilia's father's voice rang out, declaring that this was his body and he wouldn't let the demon use it for its own purposes. Rod's movements started to become strange, and Lilia managed to escape in time. Errol remembered that when George was possessed, his form changed into a beast. But compared to that, Rod's skin color had barely changed. Errol realized that Rod was fiercely resisting the demon within his own body. Lilia was happy to learn that her father was actually stronger than George. The demon began to manipulate Rod, asking if he wanted the power to reclaim his former glory. But Rod rejected the temptation. He said that Errol had made him realize that even without a right arm, he could still wield a sword. Even without skill, he could still work hard to overcome his limits. Rod affirmed that even with only one arm, he could still fight in his own way. He said that he wanted to reclaim his former position, and that could only happen if he trained hard. So he refused to help the demon and moved towards Errol. Errol then easily struck down the demon, hoping that this time it would be destroyed for good. After the tournament, more and more people joined Dragonfang. Rod was teaching all the new recruits, and the guild had begun to restore its glory. Reyna and Lilia watched the training session, and Lilia noticed that all the retired members were very passionate about mentoring. Rod wasn't sure if he should be happy about that. The boy they rescued from the dungeon, Deal, also joined the guild. He said that Rod was probably happy that the guild was expanding, but Lilia said they used to have even more members. Lilia thanked Errol for showing her father the opportunities he still had. Deal asked Lilia, "Where is Sensei?" which was his respectful way of referring to the person who had saved him. Deal was grateful and decided to call Errol by that name. After seeing Errol in the tournament, many new guild members wanted to meet him in person. But after hearing that, Lilia cried out in sadness, asking why Errol would leave her all alone, especially after he had promised to marry her. The truth was, Errol had already left to return to his village. The carriage driver asked Errol if he was sure he wanted to go back, because it was strange for a winner of the Divine Sword tournament to just leave like that. But Errol said there was nothing left for him to do there now that he'd won. The driver asked what was left in his hometown for Errol to do, and Errol expressed his desire to defeat his mother. The driver remarked that it was an interesting goal since all mothers are strong in their own way. Errol said he wasn't joking. When he returned, his mother was plucking flowers to put in a large vase because she wanted something to welcome Errol with. He guessed that his mother had sensed his presence even though he tried to hide it, but she just brushed it off and welcomed him home. She said she could immediately tell that Errol had grown stronger. Errol wanted to know if his mother could tell what he was thinking. His mother said that since she was Errol's mom, she already knew. She suggested they move to the training ground deep in the mountains, so the house wouldn't be affected by their training. The people in the market were looking towards the forest to the west, where there were flashes of fire and sounds of thunder. No one could understand what was happening. Some said that they needed to report it to the city's police chief, and some thought it might be a natural disaster. Reyna was sitting in a horse-drawn carriage, and the driver asked his customer if it was okay to pass through the village, since it looked like a battle was going on. Reyna said that no one needed to worry about the flames, as it was just Errol having some fun. She said that if the driver was worried, she would get out and walk on her own. She arrived at the house a few minutes later. When the door opened, she stepped inside. where a small child asked if she could help her. Reina wanted to know if Errol lived here, but the little girl screamed that she didn't understand. Reina was pushed out of the house. Just then, Errol and his mother arrived. Errol was surprised to see Reina, while his mother seemed pleased. The little child greeted her mother, then asked Errol who that was and how his battle with their mom went. Errol replied that it was his little sister, Mila, and his mother added that she had finally lost to Errol. But Errol didn't feel very happy, as he hadn't won in the way he wanted. His mother said that he had learned a great deal about swordsmanship in the city. Errol wanted to ask about everything that had happened in the city, except for talk about swords, but he had nothing else to talk about himself. His mother wanted to know how the relationship between Errol and the girl had started. Errol said she was Reina and that they had lived together in the city. Reina countered that she was just a fellow guild member. Errol asked why she had come looking for him, and she explained that she got worried when he suddenly disappeared from the guild, leaving only a letter behind. Normally, he should have said goodbye to everyone in person. She said that many people had left the guild for plenty of reasons, like some who had lost their motivation